policy for a second reading of rental, musical rental, and then our online academy AEO's first reading. We have resolutions of grant acceptance. We have some data share. We have diplomas, and that's our committee meeting. Just before we start, any housekeeping things, anybody that needs their cell phone close and on for emergencies, or anybody thinking that they have to leave the meeting early. I know Member Oswald already shared, but maybe 6 o'clock will be we'll be done by that time, so that might not have to be anything noticed. But anybody else? Okay. And there's any additions at all to our meeting? We can't add that anyway, right? Okay, so we're going to start. So we start with Jeff, Assistant Superintendent Horton's report.
Thank you. I want to start out my report by I always do some site celebrations, and I want to highlight AEO, ALC, Arrowhead Academy, Chester Creek Academy, Dunfeld East High School, and Rockridge for the excellent graduations that we were part of. Some of them were really big graduations with hundreds of students crossing the stage, and some of them had one student, and each of them was very important in their own way, and each of them had exciting things. I think, at the heart of it, there's kids that are graduating from our public school system, and we're just really excited to see them earn their way to that, and all the teachers and staff that supported them to get there. So it was just really exciting to see that and to be a part of that. And this was my first time to go through each of these graduations. So for me, it was a very memorable moment. It was just very exciting to see how everybody has their own take on it and just the excitement of our kids. So just a celebration of all of our staff and our students who graduated or participated in that over the last week. So an intense week of 7 graduations that I attended, but it was very exciting. So in addition to that, we also did a couple walkthroughs. Our final 2 walkthroughs through the year were at East High School and Homecroft Elementary School. We used practice profiles with each of the schools, and we debriefed on those and talked about some of the highlights. Again, seeing great class engagement, seeing great positive school climate, and wonderful things happening with staff and students there. It was exciting to see the staff in action, as always, and their work with kids. Some highlights for this month. The good behavior game is something that came up recently. This is something that our elementary schools are looking to move forward with, and all 9 elementary schools last we spoke were on board. And the good behavior game, how it works is teachers play a game with their class while students are completing independent or group assignments in small teams. Students learn teamwork. They receive positive reinforcement for promoting and following classroom rules, and they practice monitoring and managing their own behavior. While the good behavior game is played, teachers monitor teams to ensure that they are following each of the class rules. If team members break a rule, the team receives a check mark. Teams that receive 4 or fewer check marks win the game and receive positive reinforcement to encourage future success. We did check this out with some of the regional PBS folks, and they said that this was a great tool to help our students learn how to use good behavior and learn some of those skills. We also checked this out with a few other people and said it's research based, and they've seen lots of positive evidence in this game for promoting good student behavior. So really excited to see and learn more about that and how that's going to help our kids in the upcoming future. Safety team updates. So our safety team met here at the end of the year, and we kind of debriefed on what has been this year. We were charged with implementing ALICE, and we reviewed on how that went. And overall, we felt that we did pretty well with that. Staff are in a safer place today than they were a year ago, and so we feel really good about that. We also talked about some areas that we can improve upon and continue to grow, and so we talked about developing potentially some short videos, maybe 15-minute clips that we can be getting out to staff for them to see. One area that we've noted continually is how do we support our hourly employees and how can we do this? And so we're looking for ways to get them involved. Our non-certified staff are all going to receive ALICE training, as we've mentioned before, on the back to school day. We're also looking at our crisis response manual and the responses and the things that we need to do to update that. There's a lot of different pieces in there, and so we're going to be working throughout the summer on updating that manual, so when staff come back, we have things up to date and our schools are safe for all the students. That kind of feeds into the front entry piece. We are working through 2 different grants again. We have the one through Minnesota, and we have the federal grant, which will be used to update our front entry procedures. Mr. Barsness, Mr. Spooner, and I met with each of the principals and talked through their front entry procedures. We showed them an outline of what they currently have. We talked about where we're going to be installing things. We asked for feedback. We looked at their processes and procedures. We'll be doing follow-up meetings with those principals where there may need to be some. We'll be working on that work over the summer. Hopefully it's all done before the end of the school year. If it's not, there will be minor impacts. It's not a major impact project or anything like that. So even if it does go into the school year, there won't be any disruption to regular school flow with that. So we're excited about that. We also had the meeting where we took the training where we took our front office staff to a training on front entry security, and we debriefed with them, and we talked about the things that we're going to do to try to make our front entries safe. So a lot of really good things happening there. And the last thing is our staff. I just think it's really important that we take time to recognize our teachers, our non-certified staff, our cooks, our maintenance staff, our district staff, our directors, our principals, even our board members too, and all the hard work that we've put in over the last year to help our students be successful. And so I think it's important to highlight all the great work that all of you do and all of our staff do every single day. So thank you for that. And my shout out is a repeat in terms of an agenda item from last time. Since our last meeting, because we know so many people, I like to think that so many people are watching us on YouTube and so excited to be here that when they heard about the anonymous gift over at Piedmont, we had another anonymous gift at Myers-Wilkins. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to that anonymous person for helping out with our students who struggle to pay for lunch and taking care of some of those balances. So thank you if you are watching, and we definitely love these anonymous gifts. And for all of you hundreds of thousands watching right now, or 3 or 4, please consider this in the future. Thank you. And that is the end of my assistant superintendent report.
Member Loeffler-Kemp.
Sure. Thank you for your enthusiastic report. I wanted to say a couple things and then ask a question, but it was really great to see many of our administrative staff at the different graduations. Thank you, Gail. And certainly, Mr. Horton, it was great to go to all 7 of them with you. And I really appreciated where you had some opportunities to share some thoughts from the district, and that was really great to hear how you celebrated a couple of the graduations that were very small but very meaningful. So there was that. I had a question on some of the highlights. The school safety team update. Who was all on that team again? I think you reviewed it with us once, but I just wanted to refresh my memory. And then I was wondering if in some of the ideas that came out of reconvening that committee, thoughts for training subs in the district. So kind of 2 questions.
Okay. So members of the team include Mr. Ressler from Community Education, Mr. Insala, a middle school principal over at Lincoln, Mr. Colden, who is a building engineer, Mr. Barsness, health and safety coordinator. Ms. Netland is on the invite, but sometimes we don't always go to the meetings, so we touch base as needed around professional development. Mr. Cockcut, elementary principal at Homecroft. We have Mr. Lake, our climate coordinator, Mr. Johnson from transportation, Ms. Canavan, who is my executive assistant, Ms. Reese from early childhood, Ms. Sebo, principal high school principal at East, Ms. Rod, special education rep, Mr. LaFontaine from the Duluth Police Department, and Mr. Olson from St. Louis County Police Department. So that is our team, and we meet we don't have a recurring meeting, so it might be a month, it might be 6 weeks, but we tend to meet pretty regularly. And you'd asked a little bit about training. And so we have been trying to talk about how that would be. And when we talked about that 15-minute video, what in 15 minutes does everybody need to know about Alice? That was something that we talked about, trying to pilot and see what we can do. We also have the online video that we use this year, and that's something that we can use that could be part of our substitute teaching, but it is an hour long, and it gets, it's not that it's not good, but we're going to look at are there ways we can make that condensed, shorter, and is there something that we can expect all people to know about Alice? We're going to continue with some of the video stuff and some of the trainings for the next year because we're still early in the implementation phase, but kind of like our bloodborne pathogens training, after your 16th time through it, your level of learning might need to be a little different, and so we're looking at ways to differentiate that but substitutes are included in that process, yeah.
Member Kirby.
I have a question about the front entry thing. Is there a common front entry or a standardized way we're doing it now, or does it depend on the building?
Great question. So it does depend a little bit on the building, and that's where the meeting with principals came. We had a couple different plans originally when they went out on where we would do the camera and the buzzer system. Generally speaking, is that a person would be allowed to walk into a vestibule area, in a closed area, and they could get out of the winter. Most kids would be locked outside, so somebody could get in and be warm. And then inside there would be a camera with a buzzer system. And then that would be displayed on a monitor. And generally there's going to be a split screen. There'll be one part of the screen will be that front entry, and then there'll also probably be one for the loading dock as well. And so the front office person would be able to push a button to buzz any number of doors based on how many doors need to be buzzed in that building. They would come into the office, and then they would go through their check-in procedures, and then they would be buzzed out of the office. There are some minor variations depending on the site where that could change a little bit, but that's kind of the general concept at most of our sites.
So I have a follow-up question on that, because when you mentioned the front entry and the grants that we have, my understanding was that we only had grants for Denfeld and Rockridge, but are we looking at front entry and monies towards other buildings as well?
Yep, there's two different grants out there, actually. There's a school safety grant through the Minnesota Department of Education, which was the one that you just mentioned. So, and we actually thought we were most excited about that grant because we thought that was going to be the best. But we learned of a federal grant right when I started, and Mr. Barsons and I applied for that grant. It was a federal grant, and that was the COPS grant, and that one we received $500,000 for. And the one from the state, we actually didn't get very much, but we wrote them pretty much the same plus extras, so we could fill in the gaps with each one. So the big one is actually the federal grant, and then we'll take those funds out from the federal grant, and the state one will pay for that, and then we can use those funds for other safety features in our buildings. So yes, there are two different grants, one state, one federal.
And then another question is on this good behavior game, was that initiated by elementary principals, teachers? Where did the idea, when you say all elementaries have kind of bought into it and they're going to move forward with it, did it come from that level?
Yeah, it really started with building leadership. It was before one of our principal meetings, actually, and some of the elementary principals were meeting there. Mr. Lake was there as well, and they were talking about the good behavior game, and they were very excited about this, and I just happened to walk into it. So it started really with our building leaders, and they had to get 50% buy-in, I believe, from each of their sites, so they had to go back to their sites and get buy-in around it, and the staff were on board with that, and people reported that they were going to be good to go. So yeah, it was very much I think it started with our building leadership, and they reached out to staff. Staff were excited about the possibility of doing this, and so we said, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and do this and check it out.
Member Loeffler-Kemp?
Let's see here. I had a question about the good behavior game, but I think you've summarized it enough. So, no more questions. Thank you.
And I can add that the American Institute of Research identifies this as an evidence-based behavior classroom management strategy that helps children learn how to work together to create a positive learning environment.
Seeing no other questions, thanks for your report. Always interesting to see all that you do in that month between our meetings. So we're going to move on to Director Netland. Foy. How do you say Netland?
Freud.
Mm-hmm. She gave me permission to call her Netland, but I see now everything with your Freud last name as well, so now I feel like I should be moving into Director Freud.
I prefer Director Netland, just so you know.
Okay, so I've been right all along.
You have, yes. So up on my report today, my topics of professional development and curriculum are really so intertwined, I'm probably going to be talking about them at the same time, just so you know. I had a really hard time separating them out this time because most of the curriculum work is tied to the professional development and vice versa. So there is still ongoing planning and preparations underway for August staff development. Welcome back. Did some, over the course of the last month, was working on troubleshooting some of the position areas that are less common, some of the support roles or the teacher licensure roles that aren't maybe classroom teacher or interventionist but are unique in a building and important but might not benefit from the same type of professional development all day long. So I've been working with special education and other leaders to work on figuring out what should that day look like so everybody's getting their needs met on August 27th since we have such a limited time for staff development. So I've been working on troubleshooting that. Then in specific position areas, we have training scheduled, I'm excited to tell you, for elementary reading and math interventionists for this fall, related to the materials that they are actually using or going to be using with students. So that is very exciting. It's on the books, ready to go. We've got a plan in place now, even have agendas. Feels good. Also happening actually today and this week, CPM, you heard about the math pilot going on last month or the month before, and so that training for teachers who are participating is happening this week through Thursday. And then also we have coming up in about a week a group of a dozen teachers across the district who have agreed to go and do training around gifted and talented students and how do we meet those students' needs in the classroom. And that is down in Austin, Minnesota at the Hormel Foundation. And I don't know if any of you have ever had an opportunity to go down, but it is a wild, wild experience. I went last year and it was just so much fun to be able to see or 2 years ago. It was so much fun to be able to see all of the different ways people meet students' needs, getting great ideas, resources, fun, I highly recommend it. So we've got 12 teachers who are headed down to do that as well. And then kind of on the other side parallel here, we just had a extension and enrichment retreat, which is our E² program, which is code for meeting the needs of students who are excelling. And then also, we recently purchased resources for our elementary math interventionists that are common across the district. There was a team doing some research and doing some piloting over the last year, looking at what those might look like. Settled on some resources, was able to purchase those for the sites, so those are available, regardless of whether buildings have additional materials to use for intervention, but those materials are available for staff beginning next fall. And then, let's see, what else, where was I? Another piece of information going on, the science standards. I had talked about those a few months ago, and the third draft was just released about a week ago, I believe it was, and is up on the MDE's website, so I put a link into that so you can take a look if you would like. I'm going to be sitting down with our science specialist later this week to start going through that and doing some initial planning on what needs to happen as far as a timeline. MDE has not yet released the timeline for implementation. We're waiting to hear on that piece. So we're just doing some initial information looking at how our materials align and that type of thing to start. And then also this month is a busy time for the curriculum specialists. I gave them some time with their content areas to do some either revision work or planning work depending on where they're at in the adoption cycle. So there are many meetings going on over the course of this week and next week in that area as well. And that is my report.
Feedback, questions, comments? So I'll just start, and I would imagine some of it is just that this is the style of report you give, but I'm delighted to see that you share with us our professional development opportunities for our staff. I think that that ability to go to symposiums and go to conventions and trainings is something that teachers really do enjoy. So just a couple of questions, like there's 12 teachers going to the Hormel Foundation Gifted and Talented Symposium. Are they at elementary level?
Mostly,
okay.
Yes. We did a call out for anyone who was interested, wanting for people who really have a passion in that, in furthering it, to go initially, since it's something that we can't offer for everyone, obviously. And then the hope would be to offer again a number of slots next year.
And can you share with us just a little bit of how you, as a director of curriculum, are engaging in what staff development you'd like our staff to go to? Like, how do you decide, or do you, about... I can tell that you went to the Hormel Foundation probably when you weren't working with us. And of course that is, a really way that all of us find out great things. But what other kinds of staff development do you really see that you'd like to see our staff engage in?
Great question. I rely quite heavily on my content specialists for recommendations and needs specific to their subject area, since I'm not able to work on the ground with the teachers all of the time. It's just with the nature of the position, it's not possible. So actually the Hormel one, for example, was one of my E-squared teachers came up with the idea of sending a group of teachers. So, and of course I was able to jump on board since I have some knowledge of it too, and it's in state, and which is great. And then, so that's as far as content specific areas, that would be my main focus. But otherwise, we have a committee of a group of individuals from district leadership to building leadership to teachers, non-certified staff that come together and talk about staff development needs beyond curriculum, which is how the planning of like our August 27th day goes. As far as non-certified staff, besides the staff development day, I don't have a lot to do with that. It's mostly the teaching and learning side of things.
Chair Loeffler-Kim.
Yeah, a couple things. Yeah, thank you for all your work in providing opportunities for teachers to do staff development and other staff as well. And I've always thought it would be great to see a list every couple months of all the different ways staff are doing staff development, because I know there's lots of opportunities both that we provide, but also their union provides, or they seek out on their own as well. And so I've always thought that would be really interesting to see the breadth of ways our staff are doing their own development. But really glad that you're bringing 12 teachers. You said they were elementary, and are they from across the district as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And I can't recall offhand, I don't have it in front of me, the specifics, but it was a wide variety of teachers,
okay.
Mostly elementary though.
Okay, excellent. On the August 27th date, is there going to be a keynote speaker or an opening speaker of any kind, like we've often had in the past?
Good question. There is not. We are going to do a welcome video from the district office, and then we are going to have a common district-wide training around reflection. Excellent. In the focus of safe and welcoming schools. And this will be aligned, not replaced, but be aligned to the cultural competency requirement that is new for teachers. We can't promise that it's going to fulfill a piece of that, but it will be aligned and be like training. Okay. So that's going to, and that is also going to be for all staff, both certified and non-certified. Had a specific planning meeting with non-certified staff too to get input, so we could make sure that it's relevant across work groups.
Okay, excellent. That's excellent. I don't think you need a big speaker. I just know we have done that, but this sounds wonderful. So I won't be there. I will be celebrating my birthday.
And just to speak to your other comment about it's helpful to know what's going on, just this year we've been working on pulling together a professional development calendar because, like you, there are so many different things going on across the district that I might not even know about if I'm not organizing it or someone that works for me isn't. So we've been working on putting together a professional development calendar. We started with just the summer to make sure we're not accidentally scheduling things at the same time. And then we're working on getting that out monthly, at least with some of the bigger group things.
Okay.
So it's a work in progress at the moment.
Excellent.
Another comment?
Just to follow up to that, so I would imagine that would go through the QSC committee or kind of in terms of gathering some information there as well, or some of their leadership teams, or?
I've started with building principals, district leaders, anyone who has management of funds where professional development might be a possibility is where I've started first.
Okay.
As far as union-related staff development, News and Views is a great way that goes. Greg Jones, our staff development coordinator, oversees that piece, and they provide regular, it's at least monthly, I feel like it comes out every other week, opportunities that are available after school as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
And that just kind of highlighted, I just want to do a shout out to you because you have done a News and Views type of newsletter, it's called Learning Notes, Learning and Teaching Notes?
Teaching and Learning News, yes.
Yeah.
We tried that new this year too.
Is that once a month that comes out?
It comes out every month to every other month, depending on the timing with other things. Sometimes my goal was to at least get it out 4 or 5 times this year, and I think we've surpassed that.
Yeah, it was well done with input from all different areas. And I'm getting it as a board member, or am I getting it because I'm a coach in the district?
I am one of the few people that can email everyone in the district at once, so all employees receive it.
Okay, but school board members maybe are not on that list? Okay.
It's the employee list.
Is it on our website?
It is not. What was that?
We should be on that.
Technically, the board members are considered employees of
So
the
they
district.
should be in that list.
Yep.
That's something to look into. Thank you.
Any other questions of Director Netlin?
Thank you.
Next, we do have grants. We have 7 grants that we will just look at our board book and know that they are in they have made it known to us that they are planning to apply for a grant. Is there any grant you want to speak specifically to Assistant Superintendent Horton? We've got the Scott Anderson, we've got school safety, we've got Rotary Club for virtual reality set, we have Northland Foundation for prenatal to grade 3, we have Aquinas Club for seeds for a garden at Stowe, we have Boston Scientific and Burnick Foundation both for MacArthur with their Lego robotics. Those are the grants that we are looking at they want to apply for it.
The only thing that I would mention is that the COPS grant that we have, the federal grant, that is not we are not the fiscal host on that, the city of Duluth is. And so I just think that's an important thing to note, that this is a reimbursement grant, so we will spend funds and then we will submit reimbursement through the city, and then the city will take care of that piece. So while we are working with that grant, we're not the fiscal host.
Thank you for that clarification. We also are just going to look at the grant partnership we have with the Duluth Police. Is that the same grant partnership? Okay. So next I would like to call up our Head Start presentation by Pam Reese. You can bring those up too. Thank you for coming. We're going to take a look at our state grant application for 2019-2020 with Pam. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's my last one. So, in front of you is the Head Start state grant application that was submitted on Friday as required. We received about $16,000 less than last year. There was quite a snafu in the whole allocation table coming out of MDE for Head Start money, because the first allocation chart I got showed us at $765,000. And I said, okay, we can use some of that. We probably can't use it all because we couldn't turn over programming that quickly, but we could definitely meet some unmet needs that way in terms of serving more families. So went to a state meeting. That allocation chart got pulled away, and there's a couple others. This was the best case scenario for us, so I'm glad that's where we landed. But we've been promised that MDE and our Minnesota Head Start Association will be looking at the state statute on Head Start allocation so that folks aren't looking at wide swings and, losses and gains that for us, we could deal with it, but for some programs, they lost a lot of their funding. So that's just a little history on what happened, and, you don't miss it till you see it there. I kind of missed that $765,000. At any rate, what this did is our cost per child for the state grant for kids who are 3 to 5 is the same as our federal rate per child, which is about $9,993. For children that we serve only through the state grant that are birth to 3, that rate is about $14,000 and change. And so that cost per child for early Head Start went up, meaning we lost $16,000. So all told, we could serve 43 kids instead of 46. But we've spread those 43 out where we know we can keep them enrolled and keep those numbers up. So I think it came out pretty well. Just for your reference, we have 3 program options that are funded by the state Head Start grant. One is a home-based program that serves preschool-aged children and their families in their home once a week, and then offers 2 socializations a month. The YWCA Child Care Collaboration, we've had that since 2001. We serve infants, toddlers, and preschoolers in a child care setting, and we have a staff person assigned to that center. Families in Transition, or FIT, is serving infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. These are folks who have been or are homeless, highly mobile, fleeing domestic situations, that sort of thing. Socialization activities are a big part of that, and the Duluth Public Library, Neighborhood Youth, CHUM, Safe Haven, and ACO are some of our partners. One of the things that happens at the library once a month is the children's program director has a son who works for Grandma's Sports Garden. So once a month, this has been going on for years now, he donates pizza, salad, breadsticks, cookies, the whole bit, for all of our families in transition, families who come to the socialization at the library. It's just an amazing thing, So we have spent a little time and effort to honor him and his mom for their work with us, just so you know that. But we are really grateful to them. In addition, some of this $490,000 pays for a portion of folks like me who work program-wide. So director, coordinators, clerical folks, business manager, we all get a portion of the state grant as part of our pay. So that's what I know. Do you have any questions about it?
So this was submitted yesterday?
Actually, last Thursday.
Okay. And then when do you find out that we are accepted?
It's pretty much a slam dunk on the acceptance. I suppose I shouldn't say that on YouTube, but it's not a complicated process, not anything near what we do with a federal grant. And we have worked really well with state folks, so I would say we'll get something back in the next couple of weeks. So it'll be all set before I'm gone. Okay.
And with that, we would like to continue. I think you said something about honoring your workers, and so we would also like to honor you at our last meeting with you.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh my gosh. Is this the bonus check I've heard about?
Yeah.
That is fabulous.
You know, Pam, we just wanted to, as a board and as administrators, we've been actually going out to a lot of different retirement parties in the last couple weeks here. So we thought we'd save this knowing you were on our agenda to do here. But we wanted to just really thank you for your years of work with us in the district in lots of different capacities, and for the way you've really grown our early childhood programs and coalesced with all of our different programs and really made it something new and meeting the needs of our families better here in Duluth. And also the many ways you've had leadership within the Head Start program and the Head Start community in Minnesota and at the national level as well. So we thank you. And so we have a certificate that I'd like to read to you, an expression of appreciation presented to Pamela Rees in recognition of devoted public service and significant contribution to public school education through faithful, intelligent, and unselfish performance of your duties, presented on behalf of ISD 709.
Oh my gosh.
So we thank you. We also, David, would you help me with this being you're on the Head Start governing board right now, and share another gift while he's getting that together. We also have a book that a guy named Tony Durkins donated to all of our retirees as well as our graduates to thank you, and we hope in your retirement you get out to some of the many different parks in Duluth.
Absolutely.
As well, so that's a little gift. And David, do you want to wrap it up? Or unwrap it? Unwrap it.
This, in the past, the district, I think, had given crystal bowls, but this is the school board members and the PTA got together.
Oh, gorgeous.
So we have these for you.
I'll be lingering over coffee while you're all working, so thank you
So
so
that's
much.
both
Thank
from the
you.
board and from the PTA.
Yeah,
Very
the
nice.
Yeah.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah.
I can
Thanks
now
for
be.
being here.
Thank you.
This is-
I can now be the angry taxpayer at the meeting.
All right, go for it.
Not too angry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have said this to Bill and to, thank you.
Happy baby.
All right, it's a very happy bag. I've said this to Bill and to Jeff, but I'm really lucky, to have an amazing opportunity like I've had in this school district, many opportunities in this school district, and to have a really good job in a city where 25% of the families live in poverty, so I didn't know when I graduated from high school at Central that I'd be back in this building and, for the Duluth Public Schools, but it's been my honor. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Great work. Great work. This is the great part of our our role on the board is visiting, just as an insert to that, just to honor the retirees and the certificates. Thank you to the district for those diploma-like notices of you can hang that in your home office now as another milestone in the journey. We have two policies to look at. We have the musical rental policy that is in our second reading. It's a policy that Director Netland, I think, sent with us. Is there anything that you want to add to it, or that it's our second reading? So if I see any questions, Director Netland, you can answer those.
Real brief on that. There was a request that it would be school district instead of school board in the language for who was responsible for it, and I made that change. So.
Member Loeffler-Kemp.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure that anyone listening to this recognized and knew this, because I know as a parent I've gotten this question, or as a school board member, that fees for students who qualify for free and reduced lunch remain at the same percentage, and so in terms of the rental fees, and that I know as a music booster parent that we really work with families who might have that need, our booster clubs at the schools and other resources at the school site. So I just wanted that to be highlighted because I share that a lot with families. So thank you.
Seeing that there's no other discussion on our policy for musical rental, this takes place this fall then, Director Netland? Yes. Okay. And I did notice in our board book that it just, the fees are not within the policy, but it's in a letter that's attached. How will that look in catalog or in family notification?
Yep, it will go out in the family and student handbook where it does already. This way we're able to update it annually along with the handbook updates rather than doing multiple readings of the policy as well. So it streamlined the process.
Superintendent Grantzeff.
I just thought it was worth noting that the policy and the rates have not changed for 15 years. So we have it's been a while.
And is our rental musical, this is just, is this only for certain instruments? Because in most instances, the families buy the instrument. Are these just instruments that are, unusual purchases, or do we rent clarinets and flutes and trumpets? Do we have the whole gamut of rental?
If you take a look at the letter that goes along with the policy, it spells it out in there. Students and families, of course, have the option to buy or rent a musical instrument independent of the school district, but we do have a limited number of instruments available should families want to rent from us. Also, some instruments that are much larger, a lot of the bass instruments, it's just not practical to haul it back and forth every day. And so it would be rental for one to have at school and then at home, so they don't have to transport it.
Member Loeffler-Kemp.
I was just going to comment too, as a parent of music students, that it's wrong to assume that parents are buying instruments, and I know many families who at East who rent all 4 years. Certainly there are families who opt to do that, and we have good relationships with a couple of our music stores for kind of a rent-to-own option and different things like that, but really kind of a wrong assumption that our families are out there buying instruments, because it really varies. It would be curious to find out how many that do. And then the option of the 2 instruments, larger instruments from home, being I've had cello students, we've used that option, which has been a really great option to have one at home in that, as well as just to protect the instrument itself from the hauling back and forth. People are always surprised that the rental for the summer for families is $30. I think it was $20, so it went up 10. I mean, that is amazing, and I've heard that from other school districts too, how we've really kept that summer rental really low. So just a little bit kind of perspective from a parent who's had kids in music. Yeah.
Moving then on to our next policy, it's our first reading, and it is our online AEO, online learning policy. Assistant Superintendent Horton, I'm going to rely on you there. Oh, and...
All right. Yep. Thank you very much, and thank you, Principal Norman, for all of your hard work on this. He is here today to help speak to this policy, and he has put in a lot of work, and really excited to hear some of his information on this. Over the course of the last year to year and a half, really, the ALC has been looking at a hybrid schedule, and Duluth is very innovative in its approach towards the hybrid schedule, which differs from some other places. So there's a lot of nuances, a lot of conversations that need to take place. So Principal Norman has been working very hard to get us to this point now, and so the work really goes back a year and a half. As we were going through this, we learned that we have a current policy on file that goes back to about 2004 for online learning. And I'm just thinking of my own phones. I think I had an early version of a smartphone back in 2004. I think I got my first color screen sometime around then. So now we're watching movies and doing all sorts of things. So the world has changed, obviously, in the last 15 years. And so we saw, there's an MSBA policy out there on online learning, and what a great chance to not have to create a new policy, but to take an MSBA policy, and then we could add in the hybrid schedule piece to this. So there's two purposes here. One, this is replacing an existing policy that needed to be updated, and two, there's the hybrid schedule piece. So the policy has a lot of similarities to the previous policy, just in more updated language. But the key components we want to share with you, which are highlighted in red, are the hybrid learning. I'm going to ask that Principal Norman take us through those pieces in the hybrid schedule.
Sure, thank you. So, good, I have a highlighted copy. I was worried I didn't at first. What we're looking to do is working with the Regional Center of Excellence when we got flagged as part of ESSA was to follow the money, take a look at data, our continuous improvement team's work. And one of the things that we found out, we are on a 4-day-a-week program, and we short ourselves about 17% of the money that the students could max out at. And it's a double-edged sword because we not only short us there, we short ourselves in extended time money as well, so an additional 0.2 funding for the kids taking credit recovery, which is most of the students downstairs. So it's a significant amount where we can put that money back into programming to help support those students. A hybrid schedule will give us 100% of that dollar amount, in addition to starting to tap into that extended time money. In essence, a hybrid schedule is 50% face time with the teacher for direct instruction and 50% digital work. That teacher is still available to the student. That student will have a schedule that'll look like a 12-period day instead of a 6-period day. So it would be 6 periods in the morning of their classes, lunchtime, and then the reverse of those 6 periods, which is digital time. Students do not have to be present on campus to do that work. They are welcome to be. And that, in essence, is what the model will look like. So if I had 2nd period health class, I'd have lunch, and then the reverse would hold true, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. I could go back to that health teacher if I needed one-to-one work. It is also digitized, so it's available for the student 10 o'clock at night if they have a job to log in and do their work. MDE's phrase on our last phone call with them was, we are well positioned to do this based on the staff wearing the 2 hats downstairs of academic excellence online and the digital work they currently do with our ALC students.
So in the policy, what you're going to see is some language around what a hybrid schedule is, what digital attendance is, and then also what academics online is. And what the Minnesota Department of Education encouraged us to do, they said locally you have to develop within your policy how you're going to be doing attendance with this. And so that's what Principal Norman has been talking about, where there will be attendance taken during the physical portion, and then there's attendance for the digital portion. So that allows us to do some on-demand learning. So when students are ready to engage in learning, we're able to meet that need. So if I have a job or something like that conflicts and I need to start working at 1:30 and I work from 1:30 to 6, I can log in the evening and I can still do my work and I can still receive credit on that. So it's a very nice model, and what's different from this, from what some other ones we've seen, is some schools do like a day on site, a day off site, a day on site, a day off site. Principal Norman and the ALC AEO staff have found a way to do this within the same day, so shortening the amount of time that they would need to be here, offering opportunity to stay on site, but then for those students who don't need to or can't for whatever reason, they still have a chance to engage in learning beyond the traditional structures of a day to do this. So, and again, Principal Norman worked with our Chief Financial Officer on this. He worked with the Minnesota Department of Education. He worked with our office. He worked with some of the different technology components related to this, and we're still working out some of the procedural things that will live at the administrative level. But this was our first. This is our first read on policy to make these changes for kids.
Will we still be on a 4-day schedule?
Yes.
Member Oswald.
I think I jumped ahead to the last highlighted red about needing to have attendance recorded 2 times a day, one in person and one online. I know a lot of our credit recovery kids how is that going to work for our credit recovery kids, I guess is really what I want to know. If kids are going to be able to do the online portion at the high school and still have to come down here, how does that work?
So it won't impact the credit recovery students. That's a complete separate program.
Thank you
so
for
this
that
is
clarification.
in lieu of our current traditional 6-period day that we have downstairs.
So it's for the
seat-based
100-based
students.
kids. Okay.
Correct.
Perfect.
Then can I add something from earlier
Please
that
do.
you touched on? When you talked earlier about the virtual reality, the Rotary grant piece, that is for AEO, because MDE requires CPR to award the health credit. And so there is a program out there where we can do this virtually, and that will help us with that. So we're learning this as we go, and that's our first step in that direction. And we wrote the grant and received it for $1,000 from Rotary to be the first to try this. And we reached out to the Department of Ed and informed them, and they are really, really excited because no one's done this yet. So it'll be a work in progress, but that's what that was about when you touched on that earlier.
And then also the benefit of looking at our new policy is that we will then be able to show MDE and our state that our students deserve the funding for being present and engaged instead of getting reduced because of their not fulfilling the complete on-campus piece of their funding.
Correct. It'll meet 1,020 hours.
And how long have we not been meeting the full 100%? Chair Lafleur-Kemp.
Okay. How many students are enrolled for next fall or right now in our?
0. We don't roll enrollment, so every year, September, we're there for them, and we usually hit capacity before the end of the month.
Okay, so
2 weeks is the fastest we've hit the mark.
Okay, thank you.
Superintendent Gronseth.
I know that there was some question about students who are taking AEO courses, but who are in our schools. How does this affect those students? Or if there isn't any effect on it?
As far as the online policy separate from the hybrid,
Yep.
this is a good thing because of the outdated language, so now we will be adopting policy that will also cover that as part of their day. Because the current language from 2004 is quite outdated and doesn't reflect what the practices are.
Member Kirby?
Thanks. I think this assumes that every course has been digitalized, as you call it, in some extent. Is that the case?
The courses are digitized. There is some more work to do. The short answer is yes.
Member Loeffler-Kemp?
Yeah, not so much about the policy, but just about talking to a couple of your online students at graduation and the excitement from them and their families on how being a part of the online education met their needs for a variety of reasons. And that was really wonderful to hear. And also, just again, every time I talk with your staff, on folks who are working with the online program, that just how excited they are about doing it. And so just, I guess, kudos, help me out here. Kudos to you for, I was up in northwestern Minnesota too long this past weekend, but for, the work on developing this over the years. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Do you know how many students that attend AEO that are outside our Duluth district?
Great question. I do not off the top of my head. I would say it would be less than 30. And I believe we have 14 full-time roughly. So we average 1.5 courses per enrollee. And there were 643 total throughout the year. And I just got our credit awarded out of our credit recovery and independent study. There was 1,109 half credits awarded this past year.
Yeah, thank you. That helps a lot. So kind of going back to Superintendent Gronseth's question, when a student takes an AEO course, but they stay in their home school, is some of their per pupil unit formula money coming to AEO and leaves the school that they're enrolled in?
Correct. The difference being if Hermantown had a 7-period day, we would get 1/7 of that funding minus some fees that they get for counseling and other services. And if it's a Duluth student, we would get 1/6 basically of that amount. And it's the same checkbook, it just shifts. It's in the district coffers. It is set up to go to AEO first to try to establish some baseline numbers because we didn't know, and we don't roll that enrollment either. So it's done purposely to gauge what that will look like.
Superintendent Gronseth.
Thank you. And I just want to build on that a little bit and say that online learning has grown in popularity and grown in credibility, perhaps is the right thing to say, that people see online credits as an acceptable thing and even as a good thing. And so for over the past 10 years, we've seen a growing number of students taking online courses. That was certainly before we started AEO, but kids have been taking online courses from Blue Sky and K-12 and any number of other school districts. And as we have started AEO, Principal Norman and myself and Mr. Vold have done that with a vision of creating something that is truly academic excellence online, looking at high rigor courses that would be respected across the state and respected by secondary institutions as very respectable programming, knowing that, boy, they went to AEO, they did some work. And that has been the vision. And so we have seen our program growing pretty quickly. And as always, those numbers are going to come from inside first and then go to the outside. And we've been having lots of conversations about how to expand, how do we build capacity to continue to grow this, because it really is something that we're seeing all over the country as a growing population. And if we did not have AEO, and we have 600 and some students taking 1.5 credits, if they were to be taking those credits elsewhere, that would be a significant loss of revenue.
And the uniqueness is that it's 100% Duluth teacher-created content. And so it's different from most providers that provide a canned product and they just turn the key and let someone run through it A to Z. It is paced, it is teacher-driven. Content is approved by both MDE and the NCAA, so it's gone through scrutiny as far as what the product is as well.
Assistant Superintendent Horton.
One thing I appreciate about the hybrid schedule is just the creativity behind it in trying to meet our students where they're at. And we see that getting students to school at our Alternative Learning Center has been a challenge, and that's something that Principal Norman has talked about, trying to do different things with the schedules, giving them incentives, putting classes in different positions. We have now shortened the day, allowing them to check each of the courses boxes for physical attendance, but then met them halfway to say that I'll meet you halfway where you can go do things in your life that are important given your circumstances, and you can come back to learning when you're ready for it, that on-demand learning piece. And so I'm really excited to see how this impacts student learning. I know that you did we get to 100 graduates this year?
We did.
We did, 100 graduates, which I think is a record?
Yes.
It was a record, so I'm excited to see how this impacts attendance and impacts student achievement coming forward, but a very creative approach to meet our students where they're at. So excited to see where it goes.
Thank you.
So my question, too, is almost on that line with meeting our needs. So if students need to access their courses after they've left the building, then computers and digital, where are we at with that? What do we offer for the student that might struggle in that area?
So we are one-to-one housed in person as far as digital devices. The only devices that I have loaned out were the ones that aged out. And they have all aged out of circulation now, so they are not in students' hands outside of the doors here. So that's why the second half of the day is teacher availability and device availability for students. And so when they talk about programming options for kids, we lay that out as part of this option, if you're interested, is this is what the seat-based program looks like. If you're more interested in the independent study model where it's more of a drop-in at your pace instead of our pace, that's available to you as well. So as part of enrollment process, that's where we will guide them to try to best meet their needs.
So if it's independent more, it's ALC instead of AEO?
Both of these, the hybrid schedule and the independent study are ALC programs. The AEO piece is 100% remote. We do let students drop in that need extra help and support, and we have a separate space for that. Just happens to be housed downstairs as well.
Thank you for that clarification. My mind was.
It is confusing
AEO.
when they both sound very similar and the same staff wears both hats.
And I would encourage those that are watching, or when Principal Norman talks about the rigor of the coursework or the uniqueness and the creativity, they've loaded up a lot of samples on their website of specific samples of lessons that a student would experience if they decided on the AEO
yes.
Model. So I found that kind of interesting as well. So,
And we tried to do it on a broad brushstroke of multiple subject areas so
Yep.
they could look at electives as well as core courses.
so if we're going to be looking at this policy probably for another just a couple of weeks, is there any, I mean, now I'm asking you to troubleshoot, is there anything in this policy that you feel we should be asking more questions or things that might trigger something? I mean, you're the experts, and so this policy took you a year and a half. I'm sure it's very well crafted and covers everything, but is there anything you'd want to say to the board that we should be sure before we accept this policy?
The assistant superintendent and myself met prior to this meeting a number of times and today as well, and we talked about also getting it in front of the folks at MDE to just take a quick look to make sure they're okay with the direction we're heading based on their guidance. And we also didn't want to use too much specificity here. We wanted to have kind of a large coverage of it, and then we'll narrow our focus down to when it comes to the syllabi and other things that will fall underneath this.
Thanks for this presentation. I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much. Superintendent Gronseth.
I just wanted to clarify that it didn't take a year and a half to write the policy. It took a year and a half for them to design the schedule and the theory behind all that.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So continuing with our committee meeting, we just then on next Tuesday we have, I think, 4 actual grants that have already been presented, that we have a resolution that I'll read into acceptance. We'll vote on that. We have some data sharing requests. We have a number of diplomas to verify and to applaud, and that will be our committee meeting next Tuesday. Are there questions or concerns? Assistant Superintendent or Director Netland, Superintendent Gronseth, any last thing before we adjourn? Okay, well, have a great Monday. It's nice out, and I don't think it's raining anymore, and we'll see each other tomorrow. Thank you very much for a great meeting.